Hello and welcome to the Crimson Misery Podcast, episode 35. My name is Will Rainbolt. I hope you all are doing well. If you all are listening on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts, consider rating the show 5 stars. If you are listening on YouTube, like, subscribe, comment down below. And let's get right into it because we have a lot to get to over the past 3 days in college basketball. There were some notable games, some notable upsets on the women's side, and there were some buzzer beaters on the men's side. So let's get right into that. Especially in the Big Ten with both Michigan State and Michigan, but we'll start off in chronological order. Not much to say about Duke blowing out Miami 97-60. Fun fact, actually, there was a game where Indiana beat Purdue in Mackey with Cody Zeller and Victor Oladipo by the same exact score of 97-60. One of my favorite games that I watched. Later that year, Indiana, I believe, beat Purdue by 27, 28. Is that right? Yeah, something like that. It was still pretty good. That was a great year, aside from the Syracuse game. Anyway, so not a ton to say about that one, like I said, because Miami is, of course, really, really bad. Duke is playing for a 1 seed. This result, pretty much everyone could see from a mile away. Duke is just, aside from the Clemson game in ACC play, has been blowing out competition. So we'll see what ends up happening in the North Carolina game. I'll get to the Duke Carolina women's game in a little bit, but for now, let's move down the line. We have Georgia upsetting Florida. Speaking of teams going for a 1 seed, this game was in Georgia's hands pretty much the entire first half and into the second half. It was just a constant barrage from Georgia, from Asa Newell, from Silas Demery Jr. Both of those guys were balling in this one. They were keeping Georgia in front for a lot of the game. And then all of a sudden, Florida decided, oh yeah, we have really good talent. And Walter Clayton started hitting some really big shots down the stretch. Will Richard had 30 points. He was pretty much Florida's best scorer in this entire game, really. And in the first half, I believe he had 18 points and really kept Florida with any shot to win this game. And so then Florida ends up tying the game late, then Georgia retakes the lead, then Florida ends up taking the lead 80-78 late in this one, and then Blue Kane, who has been very, very inconsistent all year long, his only 3-point field goal attempt of the game ends up going down and puts Georgia in front. They hit enough free throws down the stretch, and Florida goes down. This is a game that you probably don't need to lose if you're Florida. You probably didn't want this game on your record and on your resume. Georgia on the bubble as of right now. Lenardi has them on the next 4 out line, and then if we go to, I mean, even though I'm not a fan of Jerry Palm bracketology all that much, I'd much rather, like, even though Lenardi isn't, the best or anything, I still, for the most part, when it comes to at least evaluating where teams are by, especially on the bubble, I think Lenardi does a decent enough job. I give him a little more credit than a lot of people do, I know, but Georgia on Jerry Palm's bracketology, same with the, well, actually, he has Georgia in the first 4 out, so a little bit more leniency with Georgia. And actually, yeah, this was even before both brackets are both bubble watches I just mentioned were before this upset that Georgia ended up laying on to Florida. So Georgia definitely is moving up. I would probably put them either right now on the last 4 in or first 4 out. It's pretty close. Georgia definitely gave themselves a lot of leniency here. But you need to keep winning games. You can't win this game and then lose out and make the tournament. That's just not happening for Georgia. They need to build on this game. And as a lot of college basketball analysts say, sometimes the thing you got to do is win games down the stretch, especially when you're in power conferences. You get opportunities like Georgia. They have had wins against Kentucky and now Florida. So, but they only have 5 SEC wins. So it's very difficult to really know how good this Georgia team is. And that's the thing with a power conference. The best conference this year is obviously the SEC, but at the same time, you're establishing teams, even though they have a 5-10 record in conference, their strength of schedule goes up by playing the Floridas and the Auburns and Alabamas and Kentuckys and Missouri's. Like it's really difficult to establish, and the Texas A&Ms and Ole Misses and Mississippi States. Like this conference is loaded, and not in the SEC football way where it's overhyped constantly, and you're still getting that narrative that oh the SEC tournament's going to be harder to win than the NCAA tournament. Like get the fuck out of here with that bullshit. Like we're not that's nonsense. Like I'm sorry, but there's so much more pressure for the NCAA tournament that I'm sorry, but I don't want to hear that. That's the one area where it's like, okay, yeah, that's the narrative being pushed by ESPN. That's the narrative that's being pushed by Jay Billis. And that's exactly where they're going to keep going with this. Now, with that being said, this SEC is really, really talented. And so, again, with Georgia getting this massive victory, that's going to do a lot for their tournament resume over a team like North Carolina, who, quite frankly, I don't think North Carolina should be in the tournament, but that's going to be an advantage teams like Oklahoma and Georgia have is that they've played much better teams in conference. And so the recency bias is especially going to be looking a lot better for teams like Georgia down the stretch. And we'll see where that ends up going. And for Florida, again, definitely not a loss they could have afforded if they wanted a 1 seed. But right now, it's really difficult to gauge what teams are currently on the one line as of right now. I've already talked about Houston getting that win over Texas Tech on the road. I think Houston should be a 1 over Alabama, even still. Alabama, however, did win against Mississippi State, 111-73. Mark Sears with another fantastic performance, 21 points and 10 assists. Once again, their depth with Chris Youngblood hitting 7 threes, Mark Sears at 5, LeBaron Philon hit 2 and had 10 points. And then you have 2 double-digit scores off the bench, almost 3. Like Jaron Stevens hit at 9, Mohamed Diabate had 10, Aiden Holloway had 13. I've said like 22 3-pointers Alabama hit in this game. 22 of 45. They were on fire in this game. And again, there's always that level of concern because Alabama isn't always going to shoot 22 of 45 from 3. They didn't against a team like Missouri, who is not a great defensive team, and they gave up 110 points to Missouri. They, yes, they did score like 98 points, but even still, Alabama is not a great defensive team. They did better against Kentucky. They did a little bit better against Mississippi State, so there is that level of improvement. But again, defensively, 0 blocked shots in this one. They did get 8 steals, but again, Mississippi State has their own issues. They've been super inconsistent in SEC play, and being inconsistent in SEC play means you're still pretty good, right? Like you're still getting good wins, but you're still not performing very well against the top of the SEC. So, I mean, they lost pretty badly at home against Missouri, and they lost really badly on the road against Alabama. So, there's still a lot to be decided in this conference. There's still so many games that are going to influence the standings, or impact the standings, rather. And one of those teams that's still really sneaky and a team that some people wrote off after a couple of their less than stellar performances, especially against Kentucky, that'd be Tennessee. That Tennessee ended up winning on the road against LSU 65-59. Not a ton to say about this one. LSU held their own in this one. They were still like, despite being at this point 3-11, now 3-12 after their loss, they still were playing very solidly. But Tennessee, with their high end talent, with all of their athleticism, especially defensively, can win games like this where maybe they aren't scoring as much. But again, that's going to be concerning come tournament time. I've talked about Tennessee and their offensive struggles. Only 6 of 22 in this game. So if Tennessee catches a team that is better on the defensive end and can actually match up athletically, especially on offense, maybe a good offensive rebounding team, say they get a matchup with St. Mary's in the third round or the second round. Well, technically, it is the second round this time. Yeah. So say they get that matchup, and that's a problem because St. Mary's is a really good offensive rebounding team. And that's concerning for me, especially because Tennessee is not a really good defensive team when it comes to second chance opportunities. They are really good on initial like one and done type trips. They are really good at initial defense, but there have been some cracks with this team I've noticed. So if Chaz Lanier and Jordan Gainey aren't shooting as well, same with Zakai Ziegler, that is a problem. But Tennessee can win games like this because their defense is really good for the most part and can still be they can, I mean, kind of the taste of your own medicine. They are a decent offensive rebounding team in their own right. It's 17 in this game, so we'll see with this Tennessee squad. But again, it's about you know if they are able to grab. Right now, they're squarely on the two line. I think we'll see about if they're able to get a one. I doubt that at this point, unless they make a run in the SEC tournament. They obviously have the game against Alabama coming up. There's a lot of room for improvement even still. And they're number 5 in the country currently. I know the AP poll doesn't guarantee anything with seeding in the NCAA tournament, but that aside, Tennessee is definitely a team that is it's cautious optimism always with a Rick Barnes team because there are times where they've looked invincible this year, and there are other times where like, God, this is unwatchable. But anyway, with even still, even with that being said, Tennessee, I think right now is more favorable to watch right now, or maybe even to pick in your brackets, more so right now than I can't believe I'm saying this. Iowa State, I know Kashawn Gilbert is still hurt, but that doesn't excuse this loss to Oklahoma State, one of the worst teams in the Big 12, aside from TCU and quite frankly Colorado. I mean, Oklahoma State's down there, and Kansas State as well, but oh man, you could not have afforded this. Curtis Jones is back, did not have a great shooting game, and um, I don't know. This is like I don't. Oklahoma State is again not a great basketball team this year. 14-14, they had a losing record coming into this one, but Iowa State shot 8 of 27 from three, not great, 29%. And they allowed 10 offensive rebounds for Oklahoma State. Turned it over 18 times against an Oklahoma State team that is not not the best defensive team this year, especially. I mean, if we look at Ken Palm, they're 92nd in defensive efficiency this year. So that shouldn't not really be happening in any circumstances. So Iowa State definitely slipping in a lot of the offensive metrics currently, especially when Curtis Jones was banged up. They've full strength. I can see this Iowa State team making it far, maybe like to the Elite Eight. But as of right now, Iowa State is very inconsistent. They need Kashawn Gilbert back. They need to be at full strength to have a shot because if not, they are going to flame out pretty early. And right now, I would say Iowa State on the 3 line right now. And they've definitely slipped off the 2 line after that loss to Oklahoma State. I would have said they were probably near a 2, but yeah, not after that one. So again, great job by Oklahoma State to win this one. Iowa State definitely needs to rebound. They still have Arizona at home and BYU at home. Some good opportunities at Hilton Coliseum to really get some quality wins. But then you have Kansas State, who has already beaten you, so we'll see. They've had their problems on the road. They've lost three of their last four road games this year. So actually, yeah, no, four of five. Four of five. I almost forgot the Arizona game. So anyway, with that said, Iowa State definitely slipping a little bit, but has some opportunities to rebound. Um, literally. Um, but yeah, anywho, Wisconsin, on the other hand, did win against weaker competition. They bounced back after the loss to Oregon, 88 to 62. John Blackwell had a really good bounce back effort, 24 points, 10 rebounds. Iowa State kind of similarly around the 2 to 3 range with Iowa State. They're kind of in the same category, I feel like. They're very similar resumes. They have a very similar style of play. I think Iowa State is definitely the better offensive team, and Wisconsin, I think, is a little, slightly better defensively. Um, and I know like Ken Palm definitely won't agree with me there, but just from the eye test, I think Wisconsin definitely is better on the defensive end than people give them credit for. Um, Iowa State, just offensively, I think have a better system than Wisconsin. I know player wise, John Tanje um, is really, really good, and they still have their really good forwards. But just as a ceiling, I think Iowa State I would take over Wisconsin in that way because when Wisconsin has been off this year, it's been really difficult to watch, especially in the Big Ten. Um, I get Wisconsin can be really good sometimes, but they, I think, are way more inconsistent than a team like Iowa State. Um, and again, defensively, I just, look, Wisconsin has had some lapses this year. I get it, but Iowa State definitely um, has declined on the defensive end. I feel like, and again, Ken Palm does not agree with me. I understand that. Like, get after me if you want, but I just there's just been there have been moments this year where it has not been kind of like with Wisconsin on the offensive end. Defensively, I sometimes don't understand what Iowa State does on the defensive end, and especially with often their lack of size down low is pretty concerning when they're facing a team like Arizona, who has Henry Vasar, or hell, like Kansas State with Coleman Hawkins. It just really doesn't. It hasn't always worked out this year, and they've had some games where it's like, damn, this is what people were saying was the best team in the Big 12 defensively. Like they clearly didn't show it this time, but yeah, that's kind of been that's been what the eye test has shown me. That's kind of what I've been feeling the past couple weeks, especially as of late. But again, I know like in terms of offensive style, I would prefer Iowa State to Wisconsin. So, but Missouri triumphs both of them in that category. They put up 101 on South Carolina after losing to Arkansas. I had to think about that for a little bit. Definitely a letdown game for them, but they bounced back nicely against the worst SEC team this year, 101 to 71. Not too much to say about it, but Missouri is again one of the best transition teams in the country. Caleb Grill is one of the best sixth men in the entire country, and this Missouri team has a shot to go second weekend. I really do feel that, unless they have an offensive letdown, because again, their defense is not that good. But we'll see what ends up happening there with Missouri. Kind of very similar to Alabama and Florida in that way, and Kentucky as well. I'll get to Kentucky in a little bit. But Louisville won against Virginia Tech 71 to 66. They're right up there with Clemson. Right up there with Clemson. Right now it's Duke, Louisville, and Clemson as the three ACC teams in the tournament. pretty safely, I would say. But Wake Forest in North Carolina, I think, are right now. Wake Forest is the last team in, and North Carolina is the first team out, according to Joe Lenardi. So it's pretty funny that they're both ACC teams. But yeah, Louisville keeps trucking ahead, keeps trucking ahead. I still don't know what seed they would be getting in this case, but if I had to guess, I would say maybe a 7 or 6. That's just what I mean, because again, their strength of schedule is not very good this year because they're in the ACC. They lost to Duke. They also have a loss to Georgia Tech. Like I know Clemson does as well, and that's kind of why I put Clemson in the same range. But at the same time, that's kind of where I'm putting Louisville on the 6-7 line. And same thing with Marquette. They beat Providence 82-52. Again, not a ton to say about this one, but Marquette needed to get this needs something to prevent them from limping into the tournament. Because otherwise they are going to continue to slip in this conference. So, anywho, a couple other games of note. VCU took care of Richmond 78-60. So, um, Max Shulga had 16 points to lead the way. So that's another big win for VCU after defeating George Mason to take to get a grip on the conference lead. And then we also have, where did that score go? I don't remember. This is great because you're always. Oh yeah, so Illinois defeated Iowa 81-61. They needed a bounce back win. Iowa is hurt. They are not very good. They're terrible defensively. So what better way for Illinois to get right um, by beating a pretty bad Iowa team 81-61? As I said, Thomas Slavovicic had 22 points in this one. He looked better in this game. Illinois looked better from three, went 9 for 29. They, God, after hitting just two threes against Duke, they needed a game like this to get back on track. So Illinois, good win. I don't have much to say about Iowa because they're just sort of irrelevant right now. Might be the end of Fran McCaffrey's tenure. We shall see. Um, yeah, I really I don't know really what to expect. So Gonzaga, after losing to St. Mary's to basically give away the conference, the West Coast Conference for this year, they ended up winning against Santa Clara 95-76. I know Gonzaga is a I know Gonzaga's in the tournament, but like looking at their resume and looking at their schedule this year, just not like it's not an impressive schedule, man. They do have a win against San Diego State, who I'll get to in a little bit. Um, they have a win against Indiana in the Battle for Atlantis. They have a win against Baylor early on, who is number 8, but Baylor has proven themselves to not be very good this year. They have losses to Kentucky and UConn and UCLA, who were their other three best non-conference games this year. And then they also have losses to Oregon State and Santa Clara and two losses to St. Mary's. I know they're probably going to get in the tournament just because of their name, but resume speaking, like this, I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced. Like, Gonzaga's around a 9 or a 10 if it were up to me, because it just they're again, as I said, they're going to get in because of their name, and they have talent. They have genuine talent with Ben Gregg and Graham Ike, and they they have they have enough talent to make a good run. But I'm also not convinced that their resume is tournament crazy of me to say, because I look at their resume and it's just not very good, especially when you're in the West Coast Conference. Like I like I'm sorry, but this team's not going far if they keep playing, I mean they've won good games this year and they've looked dominant at times, but again, against a team like St. Mary's, who is clearly better than them this year, they have pretty much fallen flat. So they're a very up and down team. You get the good version of Gonzaga, they could easily go to the Sweet 16 with their talent level. And at the same time, I'm thinking that's not going to be the case because they've proven to be very inconsistent. They've had low um, offensive games a lot this year, especially against St. Mary's. And they also have proven to have defensive lapses with Santa Clara and Oregon State, um, allowing a combined 200 points in 2 games. That's not good. That's not very good. So for Gonzaga, I just don't quite know what I'm getting into in this tournament. So again, and if they slump somewhat, like we'll see if they even make the tournament, and they will. But like, I don't know if they necessarily should be. Um, Another team like that, but in I mentioned San Diego State. They definitely got a resume boosting win here, and San Diego State has definitely had some naysayers this year, but and they're one of the last four buys currently, but they didn't, Lenardi didn't update the bracket to include this one. This game, I pretty much think, puts San Diego State in the tournament. Again, they need to keep winning games in the Mountain West, but they defeated New Mexico, who's now 14-3 in the Mountain West. San Diego State wins 73-65. And San Diego State, like especially against a New Mexico team that is pretty good defensively, um, had actually shot pretty well in this one. And so that was really surprising to me. I felt like I felt San Diego State had a shot to win this one, but really didn't look like themselves, especially defensively. So now New Mexico is only a half game ahead of Utah State for the Mountain West title. So that race is definitely tightening up. And we'll see what ends up happening. I'm very interested to see how it ends. But again, like New Mexico has the tiebreaker over Utah State, beating them twice. So it's probably still New Mexico, but it's definitely a little more up in the air now that New Mexico lost this one to San Diego State. So moving on to Wednesday, again, like Alabama, Auburn defeated Ole Miss 106-76. So the Alabama teams defeated the Mississippi teams, swept them on back-to-back days. Janai Broom, again, 24 points, 9 rebounds. Like I've said a lot about Auburn this year. I don't want to sound like a broken record. They're the number one overall seed, yada yada yada. They look really good, and as long as Janai Broom stays healthy, Auburn is going pretty far. So there's just no way this Auburn team, I think, loses at least. I mean, I'd say the first real round they would probably struggle in is the Elite Eight. And even then, I'm having doubts because this Auburn team just has so many weapons. Um, yeah, I mean they are really good. They can beat you in so many different ways, and they're kind of like UConn last year. They just take away so much from you, especially when the other team is on offense. It's just really tough to watch. Um, and again, because I've said my piece about Bruce Pearl being a Trump supporter and a Zionist, and I just really I don't I like rooting against Auburn, especially because of that fact, but I can't deny that they're a really good team. So anyway, St. John's also had a win to, I think they clinched a share of the Big East title for, yeah, the first time in 33 years. St. John's. Congratulations. Winning the Big East, at least a share of it. I think Creighton has a shot to tie it at least, but I don't, I think St. John's is going to win that one even still. RJ Lewis had 24 points, and St. John's about it's difficult to gauge because St. John's has been on uh, I mean been in a conference that really is not all that good. So, but even still, I think St. John's with this win, I think doesn't really do much. But I would say you didn't need a bad loss, and Butler would have been a pretty bad loss. So I think they remain a at worst of four and best of three right now. I think they're around that mark. I think they're seal. I don't think there's really a path for St. John's to get a one seed. I think they would have to win out and have some teams in the SEC lose. But even then, I think that's really asking a lot because it's going to be hard to leapfrog a team like Alabama or Florida or Houston or Duke. Um, so we'll see. But St. John's still playing. They got a good win here. So we'll see. Vanderbilt went on the road and beat Texas A&M 86 to 84. What in the world? I mean, Texas A&M, talk about a team that is slumping. Texas A&M has now lost their last three games to Mississippi State on the road, where they did not play well offensively, especially. They lost at home to Tennessee. That could have been a really big resume boost, even maybe for one, like a dark horse for a one seed. That's not happening now after the loss to Vanderbilt. Oh my God. Like, I'm sorry, that's just not a loss you can have if you're going for a one. Um, I mean, Wade Taylor had a better offensive night. Pharrell Payne had 23 points. But even then, I mean, there were so many free throws this game. This was a foul fest. This was a foul fest. Devin McLaughlin fouled out, and then Anderson Garcia fouled out for Texas A&M. Man, I just like, just, I just don't. I mean, Vanderbilt, this is a great win for their tournament hopes. This pretty much gets them in. Tyler Nickel had 7 threes in this one, had 21 points. Jason Edwards had 15. MJ Collins had 16 off the bench. And Vanderbilt just keeps doing their thing. Like, again, Mark Byington has done a really good job with this Vanderbilt team. And I mean it's really really interesting to me to see like all of those teams in like the middle of the conference like Ole Miss and Mississippi State and Vanderbilt because again as I keep saying like these teams when they can I mean it's not an out game like you are like actually supposed to play pretty well and in this game Texas A&M's defense really didn't do all that much in this one so I still don't know quite what to make um, of Texas A&M. They might be a contender for a first round upset, but we'll see. There's still time for A&M to turn this around, but they are not playing very well right now. Very inconsistent. If their defense isn't doing all that well, then their offense is usually pretty good, but then sometimes they cannot have offensive lapses at the same time and have games like they had um, against Tennessee and against Mississippi State. So that's a team definitely to watch right now. Clemson, I mentioned them earlier. They defeated Notre Dame 83 to 68. Clemson at 13th. I mean, I'd put them. I said about a 6 or 7, maybe a little higher for Clemson since they beat Duke. So maybe a 5, but that's where I think I'd put Clemson right now. Kentucky beat Oklahoma. Really needed this win to stay on the bubble and looked like they were going to get it. And then Otega Owe went berserk late in this one. I believe he scored, I don't know if it was 16 or 18 consecutive points, but Otega Owe just blew the doors off Oklahoma in the second half. And he hit the game winning layup and definitely a huge win for Kentucky. A lot of toughness has been questioned with this Kentucky team, but Lamont Butler did come back. He played 20 minutes in this one. Same with Jackson Robinson. So now Kentucky is slowly starting to work their way back in. So again, this was a game where Kentucky was still trying to like readjust to getting their starters back in the lineup. And Otega Owe, who is, you know, he's been my favorite player on this Kentucky team. And I don't like Kentucky. I'm an Indiana fan, and I respect the hell out of Otega Owe for what he's done this year. And he was clutch in this one, man. If Kentucky's going to go far, he's going to have big games. And so keep watching out for Otega Owe. Like, seriously. But on the other side, for Oklahoma, again, Oklahoma last four in, and this would have been a win that would have almost certainly put at least moved them to the last four buys. But at the same time, it's like, uh, you didn't need that loss there, especially when you had that game. But Otega Owe made sure Kentucky ended up winning that one. So great game there. Memphis defeated Rice 84-72. Not a ton to say about that one, except Dane Danger yet again had 25 points, 10 rebounds. Gee, I wonder if Illinois could. I've already made this joke, but gee, I wonder if Illinois could use some interior defense and some interior scoring. Oh, oh yeah, he transferred. Um, yeah, and again, Otega Owe, as I said, or I forgot to mention this, but yeah, Otega Owe, Oklahoma transfer. So burns your former team. I know there were some tempers that flared after this one. So, but yeah, again, great win for Kentucky, as I said. And yeah, Memphis 13-2 in the American, pretty much have that conference on lock. Um, Let me just make sure. Yeah, they're a game ahead of North Texas. I don't really expect Memphis to lose again, but if they do, that definitely opens the door for North Texas. Um, Definitely, if North Texas can win the AAC, their defense at least is pretty solid this year. So we'll see what ends up happening. But Memphis, I think, is an at-large regardless, if even if they don't win the AAC tournament. Arizona, don't have a ton to say about that one. Caleb Love had a bit of a better game this time around, had 23 points, 7 assists. And again, it's Utah who just fired Craig Smith. So little bit of a grain of salt there, but yeah, Arizona still wins. BYU won 91-81 against Arizona State, who's very likely that Bobby Hurley is on his way out in the desert. Richie Saunders at 26. BYU is still kind of like Missouri. Really good offensive team, suspect defense. They live or die by the three, which is pretty exciting, especially this is the college that produced, I mean, obviously, like, with Mormonism, but um, Jimmer Fredette. So that's kind of what you expect with BYU's philosophy, but at the same time, it's admittedly like still fun to watch. Um, Even though I'm not a gigantic fan of Mormonism, but at the same time, nothing against an offense that shoots a ton of threes. So, UConn beats Georgetown 93-79. So, I mean, this was a game that UConn definitely needed. They really should not lose this game, and they didn't. Still gave up 79 points to Georgetown, which is not great, but hey, at least offensively they look better. Terrace Reed had 20 points. Solo Ball had 20 points. They were definitely better in this one. Alex Caravan still struggling from three, as normal this year, 1 for 5. Um, yeah, Liam McNeely also had 17 points. UConn still, I would say, around the 8 to 9 line. We'll see where they end up being come tournament time. George Mason, they also won. They beat Fordham 74-64. Dayton beat Rhode Island 85-77. And even though Dayton's not in the tournament, and I don't think they should be, I mentioned this game specifically because of Archie Miller clinching, I believe, his third season in a row with Rhode Island, where he will not have a winning record in conference. I don't believe he has had a winning record in conference play since he took the Indiana job, which is really funny and also really sad because again, I was there for let me let me re let me re-say that. I was there for 2 years. I was enrolled at Indiana University for 2 years of the Archie Miller era, and that alone should be enough for um, anyone to be like, "Oh, he's such a poor soul." Yeah, yeah, it was that bad. It was that bad. Um, nah, I'm fine. Not really. Anyway, Drake defeated Evansville 65-61. I don't mean to be like self-loathing, but like also like some self-deprecation humor can be pretty funny when done correctly. Because if you're just like saying, "Oh, woe is me," the world is so shit, then it's like, dude, you might need some help. But if you do it in a funny way, then you're like, oh, he's relatable. He's making sure that you understand, like, oh, there's a little bit of masochism there. He's able to take it on the chin and not not stew over it and still have a good grip on life. That is something I don't have, by the way. That was a joke. Um, anyway, I don't know where that came from, but no, Drake definitely not a fan of the rapper. Um, Especially his more recent stuff. God, that recent album is so bad. Like, it's not honestly Nevermind levels of bad, but damn, this one was terrible. Especially with what was that song, Meet Your Padre? Damn, that sucked. Oh my God, that was horrible. Drake's Spanish is not good. But you know what is good? Um, Drake's defense, Drake's university's defense. Um, Especially on the road. Daniel Abreu had 19 points to lead Drake. They pretty much have the Missouri Valley on lock. I was a little bit called into question after the loss to Bradley, but since then they won three in a row. So definitely looking good for Drake right now. Um, just don't just don't associate yourself with a bunch of sex offenders and pedophiles, and you'll be fine. Um, anyway, speaking of pedophiles, Penn State lost to Indiana 83 to 78. Fuck, that was damn it. I knew I was oh shit. Um oops. That was not I did not plan for that to happen. That I did not plan for that joke, but um anyway, Umar Ballo, Indiana, they did not need to lose this game. Seriously. Like, if they lost this game, their tournament hopes would be over. But and it looked like they would be. Like, Penn State was dominating this game. Ace Baldwin was really good for Penn State. He was wrecking havoc defensively. He could not miss from three. He got into it with the crowd. The crowd was chanting. It was kind of like the when Matt Harms was playing at Purdue. It was the "fuck Matt Harms" or "fuck you Harms" chant, and this time it was "fuck Ace Baldwin." So yeah, um, but I got to give props to Trey Galloway. I've been very critical of Trey Galloway on this podcast. I still don't 100% trust him, but he had a great game. He pretty much rescued Indiana in this one. Hit his first four threes. I think he hit all four of them in the second half, and that was pretty much the difference. Miles Rice hit some big shots down the stretch, even though he missed three of four free throws that helped Penn State get back into it. They had a three to tie it potentially, um, and thankfully they missed. So then Luke Goody hit a couple free throws to win to basically seal it. This is a win again, great for Indiana. It doesn't necessarily put them in the tournament, even though I think Jerry Palm has them as an 11 seed. I think Delphi bracketology, is that what it's called? Is it DeFi or yeah, Delphi bracketology. I believe they also have Indiana in the field right now. Let me look currently. So yes, they have Indiana in the field. They would play Texas in the first four. That would be a very interesting matchup. Um, but again, next game is Washington. They're the worst team in the Big Ten, and I know it's on the road, but you need to win that game. You don't need more bad losses on your resume. Lose against Washington, you're done. Oregon, you lose against Oregon, it's not the end of the world because Oregon is a quad one game. Same with Ohio State. If I think Ohio State is teetering on the quad one line currently, but Ohio State did end up winning against USC, so that I think remains makes them remain on the one line. Um, so again, beat Washington. Oregon, I don't expect them to win, but if you win that one, that's also a gigantic game to get. And then win against Ohio State on senior day, maybe win a game in the Big Ten tournament, because again, Indiana's never won the Big Ten tournament. So do well there, and you're pretty much fine, I think. It's been an up and down year, but man, you just you just don't know quite what to expect in this way. So Utah State did lose though. To I forgot to mention this. They lost to Boise State 82-65. I think Utah State still is an at-large currently, but I mean Boise State's 20-8 on the year, so it's not like a catastrophic loss or anything. So Texas, on the other hand, lost at Arkansas. Speaking of which, to 86-81 in overtime. Um, Trey Johnson, despite him having 39 points, great talent, but Texas is not, as a whole, not a very good basketball team. So that definitely did not do them any favors, especially because they're still on the bubble in every sense of the word. And we'll see. We'll see what ends up happening. So, and then the other buzzer beater in the Big Ten, Michigan defeated Rutgers 84-82. Namari Burnett hit the three at the buzzer. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention the Michigan State Maryland game. Well, oh, this is great actually. I can lump these two together. So first, Michigan State played at Maryland. Michigan State. The game was tied. It was a very defensive game, and for some reason, Jacoby Gillespie, with the shot clock turned off, decided to take a shot with like 5 seconds left, and he ended up missing. Michigan State got the rebound and had enough time to shoot a half court buzzer beater and drain it. Couldn't happen to a better program. I dislike Maryland a lot. Um, as a, I don't like their fans for the most part. Um, but Michigan State, Trey Holloman hit the game winner for Michigan State, and that was definitely, or was it Trey Holloman? I believe it was Trey Holloman. Yeah, it was. It was. Okay, I didn't want to get that incorrect. So Michigan State, another great win, and then the following, I mean, beating Maryland on the road is so good. They are a dark horse for one seed. I think they're right now on the two line, especially with Iowa State's loss. I think they definitely have a shot to be a two. Michigan, on the other hand, definitely on the four line, I would say. But Michigan, same deal. Namari Burnett hit the three to move Michigan past Rutgers of all teams. Rutgers is now 14-15 on the year. Um, Dylan Harper had 17. Ace Bailey had 13. Lathan Somerville had 17. Um, but yeah, for again, it's the normal guy like Vladislav Golden at 22, Burnett at 20, and then Danny Wolf had 10. He had 8 rebounds, 4 assists. It's a very interesting case with Michigan. Like, I don't, again, if they're forwards in they're big 7 footers in Danny Wolf and Vladislav Golden, if they get themselves into foul trouble, if they get tired, if they because they've played a lot of minutes this year. That's the concern I have for Michigan because their guards aren't necessarily the best this year, but I think they go about as far as Danny Wolf and Vladislav Golden take them. I think that's pretty much what I feel Michigan's ceiling is. What that ceiling is, not quite sure, but we'll see. We'll see. Definitely come tournament time. Depends on what matchups they get. Um, oh, I this brings a tear to my eye, man. I'm so happy. Doug Gottlieb wins wins against Detroit Mercy, 76-71. Green Bay, you did it again. Your second conference win. Your fourth win overall. You may be 4-26, but god damn it, Doug Gottlieb, you're getting extended. Uh, um, yeah, this win literally doesn't mean anything. And Doug Gottlieb will always remain a clown. I just like needed to shout them out again. Please extend Doug Gottlieb. You're doing you're you're doing God's work for doing this. Um, Jesus Christ. All right. Big West. We have UC San Diego defeating Cal State Northridge 77-71 and moving to 15-2, and then UC Irvine 76-51 over Cal State Fullerton. Okay, and I know Cal State Fullerton definitely not a very good team this year. Cal State Northridge is actually pretty good this year at 28, 12-5. So definitely a bit more of an impressive win for UC San Diego. I think UC San Diego is going to win the Big West regular season title. And then it's pretty much going to come down to if both teams make the Big West final, it's going to come down to UC Irvine and UC San Diego. And that's going to be appointment television because my God, oh, that's going to be a good one. I hope so anyway. I hope it's not going to be like the last game where UC San Diego just basically buried them. Uh, so, see, we shall see. Um, so yeah, on Friday, Purdue has a chance to bounce back. They play UCLA. I think Purdue should win this game, but at the same time, it hasn't always been pretty. Akron also in action against Kent State. They are leading the MAC still. Um, And then Saturday, we have another really good slate of basketball games. Maryland on the road against Penn State, Clemson on the road against Virginia. So a couple of road teams maybe falling into some traps. We'll see. Auburn will visit Kentucky. That's going to be a really interesting game to watch. We'll see if Kentucky finally gets their roster settled with Jackson Robinson and Lamont Butler back. That's going to be pretty interesting to see if Auburn maybe goes down, maybe suffers their second SEC loss. We'll see. Um, yeah, this. I mean, I'm really excited to see what ends up happening here with that one, and then Texas Tech going on the road against Kansas. We'll see it. We'll see if Kansas's streak is legit. If they beat Texas Tech, they are gonna bounce back for sure because they've gotten wins over Oklahoma State and Colorado. We'll see if they can do the same against a much better Texas Tech team. Alabama at Tennessee at 4. That is a game everyone should watch. Ooh, that's gonna be a good one, man. St. John's at home against Seton Hall. St. John's should win that one easily. Um, Missouri goes on the road at Vanderbilt. Again, Vanderbilt just beat Texas A&M, so this could be another game Missouri ends up falling. And then Houston should definitely beat Cincinnati. Louisville at home against Pittsburgh. Duke at home against Florida State. Both those teams should take care of business. Texas A&M at Florida is going to be very interesting at 8:30. At 9 is Arizona at Iowa State because Iowa State, after the loss to Oklahoma State, we'll see if they can bounce back. And St. Mary's in action. They were actually in action tonight. Let me go back and see. They are currently up 5 on Loyola Marymount on the road after beating Gonzaga. They're gonna either be 16-1 in the West Coast Conference or 15-2. I'm not sure if they're gonna clinch tonight. They might because yeah, this is the last week the West Coast Conference plays in the regular season. So I think they've already clinched or they will clinch with a win tonight. So um, this would be pretty big for St. Mary's to get an outright victory in the West Coast Conference. So anyway, let's flip over to the women's side because there were some games I wanted to discuss. Ohio State, first of all, bounced back. After losing to Indiana, they've played much better. They beat a very good Michigan State team, 89-78. I think Ohio State, the women's side, definitely is on the 4 line, maybe the 3 at best. Um, Jay Petty had 23 points, 15 rebounds in this one. Um, Jeloni Cambridge also had 33. I should have let off with that one. And 5 of 9 from three. Cody McMahon had 17. Ohio State's going to be pretty interesting. I don't think teams really want to face them come Sweet 16 time. Um, UCLA went on the road and beat a pretty bad Wisconsin team, 91-61. Lauren Betts had 26 points, 10 rebounds. UCLA is still definitely on the one line after this game. And also TCU took care of business. Haley Van Lith had 26 against a really bad Houston team, like a really bad Houston team. Oh, the women's side is basically the opposite of the men's side for Houston because the men's team is really good and then the women's team is really bad. So, um, yeah, TCU took care of business. One of the better teams in the Big 12 this year. And then the other really good Big 12 teams on Wednesday took care of business with West Virginia with JJ Quinterly having 38 points for the Mountaineers, 75 to 6 to 46 rather over Utah. And then Oklahoma State defeated Cincinnati 74 to 64. Oklahoma State 21st in the country. Thursday produced some pretty interesting results. So Florida State goes on the road and beats Notre Dame. So Notre Dame has now lost back-to-back games. That's not what I expected. I mean, Florida State's a really good team, granted. Um, Tanya Lotson had 23 points, one of the best scorers in the women's game right now. Michaela Thompson had 22 points. And Florida State really played well, especially bouncing back after a pretty rough first quarter. They were able to find their groove offensively, and in the second and third, were finding pretty much anything against Notre Dame. Like they were really having their way with Notre Dame, who's usually a really solid defensive team. Um, but yeah, this is a great win for Florida State. Like really great. I mean, Notre Dame number three in the country, and you go on the road and beat them. That takes a lot of guts. And that doesn't necessarily happen too often on the women's side. And so for it to happen now is like, oh, Florida State, like, yeah, I mean, you're ranked and you have one of the best scorers in the game right now. And yeah, great win again, great win for Florida State. Florida State. I sound like I don't know what that accent was. Let's just move past that. Yeah, and then but yeah, Notre Dame back-to-back losses. We'll see if they can rebound against Louisville. And South Carolina beats Ole Miss 75 to 59. I don't know if South Carolina gets a one, maybe so now because Notre Dame lost. Not sure if Notre Dame's on the one line at this point. We'll see. But there are a lot of really good teams like UCLA and Texas, USC, and UConn are obviously going to be in that mix too. Alabama won in overtime against number seven LSU, 88 to 85. This was a really interesting game. Aaliyah Nye had 28 points. I think that's how you pronounce her name. 28 points. Sarah Ashley Barker had 21 for Alabama. And LSU on the two line right now, I'd say maybe they remain on the two line. Maybe they get a three. Michaela Williams had 22 points. And for Alabama, um, they definitely on the defensive end clamped down, even though they didn't have a great defensive game, but they got a big block to hold off LSU. And really, like, yeah, they also, I mean, the refs were not also pretty bad in this one. I feel like, and especially when you have Nia and Barker both fouling out, definitely didn't help them. But LSU, despite, yeah, again, I celebrate any Kim Mulkey loss. So I they're still really good, but also anyway. Um UConn, speaking of which, beat Creighton 72 to 53. Texas, after holding Georgia to 27 points, defeated Mississippi State 68 to 64. Um, Rory Harmon hit a really good buzzer beater to basically give Texas a good amount of momentum in this one. And Mississippi State, who definitely was playing for their tournament lives, could have definitely used this one. But Definitely did not happen. And another great win for Texas, who is number one in the country and will, unless they excuse me, unless they end up falling to, forget who they play next. Florida. No, they will not lose to Florida. Okay, so yeah, they're fine. They'll be number one come SEC tournament time. Yeah. So Duke gave North Carolina a taste of their own medicine, winning 68 to 53. They really, despite not playing very well in the second quarter, they ended up bouncing back in the third quarter, outscoring them by 12. They got a big game from Toby Fournier with 19 points and 10 rebounds. And North Carolina, who I believe is still missing Alyssa Usby, um, definitely will need her come tournament time if she's going to be available. I'm actually not sure on her injury status. Um, Let me find out. Well, why is it when I like need information, I it doesn't end up showing up? So, okay, so they are, yeah, she and Renaya Kelly are both supposed to return at some point, but yeah, they definitely need both of those players in order to make a good run in the tournament, I feel like, because then they might be kind of that version of Virginia Tech last season when Elizabeth Kitley ended up going out with an injury. But still a great win for Duke. And then Kentucky, same thing with the men's side. Kentucky blew out Tennessee 82 to 58. Not a ton to say about that one. But Clara Strack had a pretty great game with 23 points, 15 rebounds. Talasia Cooper had 25 for Tennessee. Uh, Geez, I think they're both a four. Yeah, I think they're both a four seed right now. If I had to guess, maybe a five for Tennessee. It depends on it depends on what happens the rest of the way. It's really difficult to gauge right now, but we'll see. Maryland, unfortunately, Indiana fell flat against Maryland, 74 to 60. Um, I think Indiana's about a 10 seed right now, maybe an 11. I'm not quite sure. I don't want Indiana to go to the first four, but it'd be better than not making the tournament. So, I've always wondered this question. Would you rather win the NIT or lose in the first four in the NCAA tournament? That is your question. And if you want to answer this question, feel free to email me at crimsonmiserypod@gmail.com or tag um, at Crim Misery Pod on Twitter or Blue Sky, or my accounts at Will AJ Rainbolt on Twitter, and then Will AJ Rainbolt at dot Blue Sky dot social. And I'll ask this question again: would you rather lose in the first four of the NCAA tournament or win the NIT? That's I've thought about it. I would rather win the NIT because at least, you would win something. And if you just go home in the first four, it's like, well, that was for nothing. Like I would rather win the NIT. So, um, anyway, Louisville also defeated Clemson 78 to 52. They are they're still trying to. I mean, especially after they lost to North Carolina. They definitely needed a bounce back win. They got it, so they will play Notre Dame next. Oklahoma also went on the road, and yeah, they beat Florida pretty good, 89 to 50, to 65. Peyton Verhulst had 17.7 rebounds, so Oklahoma's still looking pretty good, trying to build off last year's team that was pretty good, but lost to Indiana in the round of 32. So whew, we'll see what ends up happening. Don't forget Saturday at 9 on Fox is the rematch, USC versus UCLA. Do not miss that game. Seriously, do not miss it. Um, anyway, also, I mean, you also have on Sunday you have Kentucky, South Carolina. uh, Ohio State, Maryland, Duke, Florida State, TCU, Baylor. Some really good games on Sunday too. So make sure you're keeping up with the women's side. And yeah, I think with next episode we'll be covering a lot that happened this past weekend. Um, but then after that, it's 1 week away from Selection Sunday, or no, 2 weeks. Wait, no, wait. My brain is short circuiting. So after this weekend, 2 weeks from Selection Sunday, right? Yes. So it's this weekend, next weekend, which is the men's regular season finale, and then it's championship week. Yes. So after that point, we will have two more, and then the brackets will be revealed. Whew. It's exciting. I'm very excited. Um, also, before I leave, I just wanted to give a honorary rest in peace to a couple of really really sad losses that we have had these uh, couple last couple days this past week. Obviously, you had the loss of Michelle Trachtenberg, uh, played Dawn on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Also, I believe was in um, movies like 17 again. I believe that was her. Um, was she on 17 again, or am I thinking of someone completely differently? Uh, let's see here. Yes, she was 17 again. Also, was on in Harriet the Spy, and also um, was on Gossip Girl as Georgina. And yeah, apparently she was having some sort of complications from her liver transplant, and very sad loss. The For any fans of Buffy out there, um, we're getting a reboot, and a lot of people would have wanted to see um, her see many of the actors and actresses in that show. I know Joss Whedon is very very problematic. I get it, um, but at the same time, it's gonna suck to see. Yeah, it's gonna be really difficult to see her not be in the show, especially as Dawn, Buffy's little sister. I don't want to give anything away if you haven't seen that show. I definitely recommend it, despite Joss Whedon not being not being a great person. But at the same time, I like to think of Buffy more as like the actors and the crew who were so instrumental at making that show great, at least for the first like 5.5 seasons. Um, anyway, Roberta Flack also passed away at 88. Um, Famous singer, and yeah, had songs like "The First Time I Ever Saw Your Face." I believe that was a song of hers, and yeah, she had complications of ALS. Um, 88 years old. Rest in peace, Roberta Flack. And then Gene Hackman. This is crazy. Gene Hackman was found dead along with his wife. Um, Initially, it is also one of his three dogs was also there. Gene Hackman was 95. His wife, I believe, was 64. Pretty big age gap there. But yeah, it was initially thought to be a gas leak or carbon monoxide poisoning, but in recent hours, it's been um, theorized that or the police may be looking into like some suspicious circumstances. So not quite sure what it is so far. A lot of theories are being speculated right now that maybe because their bodies were discovered like at least a day, or they were dead at least a day before they were found, and um, I'm not sure if he may have died first and then she ended up committing suicide, and because there were some pills that were found, and people are saying, well, maybe her dog also, or their dog also may have swallowed some pills, and that's how the dog ended up dying. It's a very sad story. Um, Even though he was 95 and lived a great life, that's just not a great way to go. But again, it's just theorizing right now. It's not like conspiracy theories. Like a lot of crazy right wingers on Twitter were saying he was somehow connected to the Epstein files or some shit like that. Like crazy, crazy stuff. But yeah, rest in peace to Gene Hackman, Roberta Flack, Michelle Trachtenberg. Um, Very, very sad, sad week in celebrity deaths. So, um, God, why couldn't? Never mind. I'm not going to finish that sentence. Anyway, so also before I end off, uh, we currently are in the final 5 seconds of regulation for St. Mary's and Loyola Marymount. St. Mary's is currently winning 58 to 55. Currently, Paulus Morauskas has 18 points. And again, I believe this is for the West Coast Conference regular season title if they end up winning this one. So let's see. I guess let's see what ends up happening here. Couple substitutions for both squads. There's 2 seconds left. Let's see here. Great podcasting, by the way, is when you don't know what exactly to make of the score on your computer screen. Um, yeah. If anyone's interested in watching Buffy, my favorite couple seasons are season 3 and season 5. Those are my two favorite seasons. For those who need like a guide of some sort, but it's worth watching all the way through, I think. So, so currently St. Mary's had inbounded the ball. I can't tell who that was who just got fouled, but there's 2.7 seconds left. St. Mary's is going to the free throw line. It is Mikey Lewis. He got fouled. 74% foul shooter, up three with 2.7 seconds left. If he just makes this one, the ball game is over. It is a 1-and-1. So if he misses, Loyola will have a shot. It is up and it is no good. He missed it. Dribbles it. Half court heave for the tie is short, and St. Mary's moves to 26-4 on the year. I believe, well, maybe not. Maybe they already clinched the West Coast Conference regular season title. Maybe they did, and I'm just misremembering. I thought if they won today, they would have clinched, or maybe they already did. Yeah, yeah, they did it. They have won the West Coast Conference regular season title. They're 10th. Congratulations to St. Mary's. 17-1 would be if they beat Oregon State, but they're 16-1 now. Great job for Randy Bennett, who is 48-5 in his last 53 West Coast Conference games. That, according to Matt Zimick of the Trojans Wire, beat reporter for USC. He, yeah, so wanted to give credit there for that statistic. But anyway, um, also, another thing I wanted to mention, Jesus Christ, it's just like this is a continuing podcast, just to bloat the runtime, apparently. What am I? James Cameron? Anyway, um, the traders definitely, I talked about this, a little bit with Emma Vigland, during our interview, but, um, for any spoilers, just turn off this podcast. But if for those of you who have seen it, basically, Carolyn did end up getting out. I don't know if I mentioned that in a previous episode, but yeah, Carolyn is gone. My person I was rooting for the most. Danielle is now the lone traitor, or was the lone traitor, but then she recruited Brittany in this latest episode. There's going to be a seer that gets revealed who will decide basically um, what person to interrogate and decide whether or not they are a faithful or a traitor, and that person has to answer honestly. So that's going to be very interesting to see, but it looks like Danielle is going to be voted off because there was a cliffhanger in this most recent episode where it was between her and Ivar, a faithful Lord Ivar, who's British, and it looked as if because Danielle and Ivar got equal votes, so they tied, and then it was 2-1 in favor of Danielle getting banished, and it was Brittany, the traitor who got recruited by Danielle, with the potential sealing vote. And it's looking like she's going to vote for uh, Danielle, although I'm not 100% certain of that. If she were to vote Ivar, it'd be it'd just be another draw at that point. So they would just keep voting. So I'm not sure if that's exactly what's going to happen, but I hope Danielle goes. I really don't like Danielle all that much. I think she's a gamer, but at the same time, I just think her over the top mannerisms and her overall very messy gameplay is leaves a lot to be desired. I don't think she's going to be winning this one, but we shall see. For those who are fans of the traders, you'll definitely understand where I'm coming from there. So, anyway, that will do it for this episode. Again, very excited to break down the final um, week and less than a half of the college basketball regular season because then we get the championship week. That's going to be so fun. And then, obviously, with the tournament starting, there's so much to talk about, and there's so much to watch. Very excited, very much looking forward to that. So, anyway, thanks very much for listening, and I will see you all next time where we break down a little more college basketball. So, anyway, take care. I'll see you all next time. Bye bye.